Well, hello everyone. We're gonna get started, with our live video, our live farm tour. Hi, first viewer. First lucky one to see the calf nurse. So we'll wait for a few more people before we start getting into everything. So for those who didn't tune in to our last virtual farm tour, this is one of our bottle calves. This is Kiss, and she is a heifer calf. Oh, lots of people popping on now. Okay. All right, so I just got notification that we have a cow calving in our barn. So we're going to go take a look at that in a moment. But first, we're going to feed this girl. So this is one of our bottle calves. The other one is a bull calf, and he's having his fun somewhere else, and he'll get his milk a little bit later. But this calf is an Angus cross, so an Angus is a breed that originated in Scotland in the county of Aberdeen. The breed's full name was Aberdeen Angus and still is in Scotland, but now it's just Angus in North America. And there are two types of Angus. So you have red Angus and then you have black Angus, but they're two separate breeds. So she's just going to continue drinking her milk. And she's just about done. I let her drink most of it because otherwise they sometimes take their time, but for the most part she's really good. And we can see the other one all the way at the end of the yard, not willing to come over here. But we have lots of cats who are joining us. They always know when it's feeding time because they sometimes get a little bit of the milk. So they're all hanging out waiting for a treat. This calf is a bottle calf because her mother didn't quite understand what had happened to her after she had her calf and just wasn't very accepting of her baby. It was a first-time heifer, and sometimes that can happen where they just don't quite know what's going on, so they'll reject their calf. And so that's what happened with this one. They act differently than most other calves because they get so used to us and they get trained by the bottle, and they're very willing to run halfway across the yard just to have some milk. So she's almost done, but we're going to let her get a little bit more because I already gave the cats some. They don't really need any more milk. We'll give it all to her. So these calves are fed 3 to 4 times a day, and they drink close to 2 liters of milk each time. So that's a little less than 2 of those big jugs of milk that you can get at the grocery store. So that's a lot of milk, and as they get older, they will drink more and more and more. And the way we'll manage that, because it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to really stand there and watch them eat. So we can fill a pail full of milk and set that up against a slab fence, and they'll nurse from a pail, just like the way they'd nurse from a bottle. These calves, or this calf and then her other penmate, the other bottle calf, are polled, meaning that they have no horns. And just like dogs and cats, they really enjoy scratches. And especially as they get older, they enjoy it more and more because right now they're still pretty fresh. They don't really have any itchiness on their skin yet, but as you can see, she just loves being scratched up and down her back. She'll arch her back, and she'll just really let me go to town and give her a good rub down. So for anyone just tuning in, this is one of our bottle calves. This is Kiss. She's a black Angus cross heifer calf, and she's one of our bottle calves. We have a second one who's just over running around and not really minding that he didn't get fed, but I'll feed him just a little bit later. One of the things I also wanted to touch on is, so this calf was born 2 weeks ago. So a cow's gestation lasts the same amount of time as a human pregnancy, which is 9 months. And they generally have a single calf when they give birth. Oftentimes, cows will have twins, and twins are quite common. And sometimes cows or certain cows in your herd will be known to have twins. Anything more than 2 is really uncommon, but there have been cases where people will have cows that have triplets and even quadruplets. In some cases, all the calves are able to survive and do really well. But oftentimes, there's not a lot of room in a cow to be able to produce 3 healthy calves as they get smaller, because that room is taken up by so many babies that they just don't always grow at the rate that a single calf does. So now that Kiss has had her food and she doesn't really need me anymore, she'll just go around and explore the yard. We keep these calves in a special pen inside our shop. They're not with the rest of the animals just because they are orphaned and they don't quite understand what all the other cows and calves are doing. They kind of see themselves a little bit differently, and so will the other animals. So they get to go in a pen inside, and then when we feed them, we let them out, and they get to run around the yard, and they'll always come back because they always want food. Now say, as we're talking about this, and we're talking about twins, say you have a cow who has a set of twins, and one is a heifer and one's a bull calf. There's a 92% chance that the female is a free martin. And a free martin is a female born co-twin with a male, and that female will likely be sterile and not able to reproduce. As the embryo is developing inside the cow, it starts out as a female, but then it acquires the male chromosome in utero, and then they develop together. So that female ends up being half male. Not all the time, but 92% chance. It's a really high likelihood that that female isn't going to be fertile. Now, if you have 2 male calves, so 2 twins that are males, there's no problem at all. They're both going to be just fine, as well as if it's 2 females. The only problem you'll run into is if you have 1 male and 1 female. So now, as we're watching her just kind of run around the yard, I'm also right next to one of our other pens. And we're next to our, well, it's a racetrack around here. We are going to check out my mare. So this is one of our other animals. And this pen is a really interesting one because it has both a horse and a ram. And you would think that these two wouldn't really be the most likely of friends, but in fact they are. These two are really great friends, and they get along really well together. So we'll give her some feed. So this is my mare, Mia Goodbar. She is a registered quarter horse with the American Quarter Horse Association. And then this ram is a purebred Suffolk ram. So I don't always give them treats, but I will today for everyone to have some fun with them. So this mare is sorrel in color, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to see her color because the sun is really bright, but she's kind of an orangey reddish color, and so that's one of the 17 recognized color coats by the American Quarter Horse Association. They recognize a various number that include sorrel, black, brown, bay, palomino, and many others. And then there are different style of markings on horses' faces, and they also have distinctive names. So the one she has on her face is a blaze, and so it comes down all the way between her eyes, down around her nose, into her muzzle, and then her muzzle is a little bit pink. So in the summertime, and even in the winter, any animal, whether it's a horse or a cow or even sheep, if they have a lot of pink or white on their face, you really have to be careful because they can get sunburned really badly. And especially if that pink or that white occurs around their eyes, you especially have to be cautious because they can get pink eye from the sun just reflecting so much around that area. Luckily, she doesn't have that issue, so I don't have to worry too much. I purchased her from the Lakeland College horse sale when they used to have it, and I bought her back in 2015, and she's been a really great horse. Quarter horses are found around the farm for various different reasons, but mostly because they have a really great cow sense. And so what that means is they can anticipate what a cow or other cattle are going to do before they even do it. So their reaction time is really strong, and they're able to move with the animal really fluidly as you're working them. So they excel in a lot of different cattle moving disciplines, such as cutting and roping, as well as just general farm and ranch practices. So the ram's not as comfortable with eating out of my hand, where she doesn't mind too much, and she's getting far more treats than normal just for this. And he'll just eat it off the ground. So we'll give him some love as well. There you go. So back up to her. Quarter horses were originally used as a sprinter. So they ran races that were a quarter of a mile long, hence the name quarter horse. And they're one of the most popular, they are the most popular breed in North America, and they are starting to become one of the most popular breeds in the world. I'm the only one who rides her here at our farm. Everybody else uses quads and ATVs and trucks. So she has to be really confident in me as a rider and really confident in herself when we're riding around everything, because they're quite loud. And I want to make sure that when we're moving the animals, it doesn't spook her with all that loud noise from the motorized vehicles. However, even though those motorized vehicles can start and stop faster than she can turn on a dime, and she has the agility and ability to move in a smaller space much faster than those quads and those ATVs. So I like using the horse where my brothers like using the quads, but they both have their great qualities, and pairing them both together, you get an excellent cattle handling and cattle moving team. So horses can sleep standing up or lying down, but generally standing. She's a little bit different because she is in here with the ram. She likes to fit in. And I'll often see her lying down far more than I'll see her standing up when she's sleeping, or just lying down in the middle of the day just to match what he's doing. That's not really a general rule for horses, but when they're put in a situation with another animal, they want to adapt, and they want to seem as one another. So we also have one of our cats. It's a lovely day, so the cats don't mind coming out for a visit. They're also probably hungry, so that's why they're here. And as you can see some white on her legs, so they're, as well as the stripes or the blazes on the horse's face, there are different names for the markings on her legs. I'm not 100% sure which these would be, because there are various different names that different associations and different clubs call them, but I'm kind of going to go with they are a long stocking, and then I think the other one I kind of deduced was just right above, and calf running right by. I believe the other white spot on her leg is a pastern. I think it might be a little bit more white now that I'm looking at it up close, but there are different marking names for all the different white bits that occur on a horse. The feed that I'm giving them right now is just straight barley. Normally I would give them some rolled barley The rolled barley is easier for them to digest, and because it's broken up into smaller pieces, but we don't have any more rolled barley, so they have to deal with the whole barley, which they don't mind too much. As long as they get a treat, they're a-okay. Now our ram, he doesn't have a name, but he's a purebred Suffolk, and a ram is a breeding male. Suffolk breed was developed in England around the 1800s by mating Norfolk horned ewes with South Down rams, and that's how the breed was created. Suffolk sheep are among the largest in the sheep species. As you can see, he kind of surpasses right where the horse's belly comes up. A little bit of that is due to all his wool, but he's still a massive sheep in comparison to some breeds. The distinct features of Suffolk are the nice black face and the black legs as well, and then the rest of his wool on his body is all white. They're also really known for their large size again, and they are polled, which means they have no horns. Some domesticated breeds of sheep have horns and some don't. We breed our ewes in December for our May lambing season, and the gestation of sheep is much shorter than of cattle. It's only 142 to 150 days, but the average is around 147. So we leave this fellow in with the ewes for about 34 days in December, and so that'll cover the 2 heat cycles of the ewes. Having the ram in with the ewes for just over a month allows them to be bred all within a very close time range, because we don't want our lambing spread too far out, because then you're going to have to watch for lambs throughout the month, and we want to keep it really short, really condensed, so all our lambs are roughly the same age within a couple of weeks of one another. So after he does his job, and he's a great breeder and he does it very quickly, he gets put back in a separate pen, whether it's with the horse here or one by himself, and so he's kept away from all the females for the rest of the year. And the other reason we do that is for males, especially that have to cover a lot of females, whether it's bulls or stallions or rams, it takes a lot of energy out of them. So they need to regain that back for the next breeding season. So they're kept away from all the females and given a chance to rest up and regain some more of their weight back, because they do lose a lot of that, especially if they're having to cover a lot of ground, and just a lot of their condition, so their size. So as he's eating, we're going to take a look at his wool. So he has quite a bit of wool, and most domestic sheep have wool that grows continuously, so it needs to be shorn at least once a year. A year's growth worth of wool weighs in at about 8 pounds, and we shear our sheep in the spring right before the lambing, and we do this so the lambs have a clear pathway to the udders of the ewes, because imagine trying to get through all that thick wool. You're just born trying to get through all that thick wool, and it can be quite the task for the little lambs. So we shear the ewes right before that happens, and then they're also nice and cool for the summer months. It's just like people getting a haircut. Shearing doesn't hurt them at all. They get set on their back ends, kind of like a dog sitting, and they don't move at all when they're in that position, and whoever is doing the shearing is able to get it done quite quickly, especially if the sheep are cooperative. My brother is the one who does our shearing here at the farm, and we set up a generator in their pen, and he uses a pair of electric cattle clippers with a special blade just for shearing wool, because it is so thick. You have to have one that has really wide teeth. And after he started learning to shear, by the time he got to the end of all the ewes, he was able to completely shear a sheep in about 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the size. Cats and rams and horses. And once all the sheep get sheared, all that clean wool gets packaged up, and then it gets taken to an auction mart nearby, and it's sold for textiles and yarn. I'll give them one more. And because we are calving right now, and calving, depending on the animal, depending on the time of day, depending on the weather, the calving process can go quite quickly. So we are going to skip some of what we're going to do, and we're going to go take a look at the cow calving, because that's a really exciting and fun opportunity that not everybody gets to see. There are even some years where I'm not around and I missed seeing any calves calving. So we're going to go over there and take a look. And we might have some cats follow us, waiting in the sun. So we have various different animals around. We have our little Kiss, our bottle calf again, who's just here hanging out with all the bull calves and some of the steers. So all the animals get along really well here. They kind of have to, and they have to be used to whatever we're going to throw at them, because we have cattle and horses and sheep and ducks and geese, and especially the geese are very obnoxious and very loud, and a lot of animals would probably be fairly uncomfortable if they came across a lot of these. A lot of horses aren't comfortable with sheep, a lot of cattle aren't comfortable with horses, but here we have pretty much every animal that you can find on a farm, minus some pigs and some goats. But otherwise we have it. And everybody gets along fairly well together. They all know their place. And sometimes certain ones get a little bit too close. But with the cat and the calf at this point, they're quite used to one another, and cat doesn't pose a problem to the calf at all. Now, if this calf had a mother, and if it was in our big cow pen, that cat would never be allowed to get that close, because even though the cats pose absolutely no threat to the calves at all, the mother cows still don't mind, or they do mind, and they're not going to let the cats get that close, because they are predators. And even though they are small predators, in the cow's eyes, they might cause an issue with their calf. But these are our bull calves, some of them. And this feed right here, this is a mix of silage and hay. So our silage is corn. It was the first time we had grown corn this year, as well as made silage for many, many years. So the way silage works is it gets chopped up into very fine pieces, and then it gets piled high into a large stack, and it gets packed down. Each layer gets really packed, and then it gets covered with plastic, so no air can get into the silage. And then it ensiles. So it essentially ferments, and it essentially gets to the point just before it spoils. So it can be it has quite the sweet, sour smell. A lot of people think it is sour, but really you want your silage to have a nice sweet smell to it. You want it to be nice and moist, and the cattle really enjoy it. So we mix our silage with hay, and then it gets fed out to pretty much all of the animals except for a couple. The sheep don't really seem to care for the silage all that much. They really enjoy the corn when it was out in the field, but as silage, they're not so much of a fan. So we're going to walk through our one pen of steers and bulls. Now, a lot of people think that bulls are the ones you really have to watch out for. They're very dangerous. They're very aggressive. When the opposite is really true. You really have to watch out for the cows with the calves. They have something to protect. The bulls are just being big and rammy, and they're just being showing their size. We make sure that the bulls we have are very quiet and very docile, so we never have any issues with them. That's one of the most important factors we look at when we're buying bulls. This is our calving barn, so it's insulated. And one of our cats is going to join us. Hey, kitty. I'll also mention that these bales here, we have some straw bales and then we have some hay bales. This isn't how we feed our animals normally. They get big round bales that weigh approximately 1,200 pounds, but we use these bales for inside the calving barn here because we're not able to get the tractors inside until the very end. So I'm going to speak a little bit more quietly as I go into the barn because we want to make sure that we're not disturbing the cow. But we do have one of the calves that's just out here, and then the rest of this pen is filled with calves running around. This is where all the cows have gone once they've had their calves. All of the other cows and heifers are in one of the other pastures. And we bring them up once they start showing signs that they're going to have a calf or if they've had a calf already. So we're going to go in the barn. I'm going to be a little bit more quiet. And we're going to watch a cow have a calf. So this is where all the cows are put once they've had a calf, freshly had a calf. They just come in here so they can bond, they can dry off, especially if it's a little bit colder. Because a lot of our cows that we have this year, this is first-time heifers actually, so it's their first time having a calf. So sometimes they just need a little bit more time to figure out what has happened, why all of a sudden they have a calf. So right here, this cow is about to have her calf. She's in the middle of labor. She has the front feet out as well as part of the nose. There you can really see, you can see the front feet. And when we're looking at a cow when she's having a calf, if we need to decide we need to assist them, we look at the position of the feet, as that's incredibly important to know whether or not the calf is in the right position, because if the calf is upside down, backwards, then you've got into some real trouble because it doesn't, it presents a bigger challenge for the cow to be able to give birth to that calf. Because as the cow is pushing, as the cow is having her contractions, the calf is also assisting her a little bit in the process of the birth. So you never want the feet to be upside down. You never want to feel a tail first. You always want to have a nose, and you always want to have the feet coming with the hooves pointed down. So they will occasionally stand up, lie down, stand back up, lie down, and depending on the cow, they can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. This cow's calf is a little bit bigger, and you can tell that from the size of the feet. So she might need a little bit of assistance. She's not a really big cow herself, but we always give them some time, and if we see that they're not making any progress at all, then we'll step in and we'll assist them. And we'll assist them using this yellow structure here. This is our maternity pen. So it's just like a typical squeeze that any farm would have, but instead of being completely closed off, we're able to let the cow into this. She puts her head through the head gate, and then we're able to open everything up, so we're able to get to the calf and assist her in the pulling process. So she can see that the cat is right here, and she's not very impressed with that, so I might have to get the cat out of here. They don't mind us watching so much, but definitely anything additional is not overly, they don't really love having people watching or cats around or dogs. So we're gonna give her a little bit of a little moment here. The cat finally ran out, so that should help her. But we'll give her a second for her to do her thing, and probably by the time we come back, something will have happened, or we'll get closer. So here we have one of the other babies that was born today. And another one. Just back there you can see its head popping out. So she is lying back down. She doesn't seem to mind that I am here, so maybe we'll just stick around for a bit. It was the cat that really was the issue. So some of the things that we'll use in addition to the maternity pen for calving are chains. So I'll have a set of chains that get wrapped around the calf's legs, and then lots of hot water, lots of soap, surgical gloves, and sometimes if it's a really hard pull, we have a jack, and so that can be used to assist the cow. So we have our chains, and we have our hot soapy water. Surgical soap. And so what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to set the phone up on our wall here where we have all of our equipment. So we have our gloves, just regular latex gloves, and then we have long OB gloves that go all the way up to your shoulder. So I'm going to set the phone up against here and then help to assist the cow. So I'll switch this around. So this is what the handles look like for the chains. This is my brother Alex. So he's out here day and night making sure that the cows are doing well, the calves are doing well, and if anybody needs some assistance, he'll step in and assist the cow and calf. Because this cow is quite, she's one of our quieter ones, Alex has just gone up to her and he's putting the chains on her just as she's sitting right there. So I'm going to step away from the phone for a bit and take in the handles. So, I don't know how much anyone could see, but we did have to help the calf, or help the cow and the calf. And while didn't quite get to see it born, this is pretty close. This calf is just born, and it's a really big calf. It's a dark red color. And Mom's just gonna take a break for a second because that was a really hard push for her. But the calf is doing just fine. So after the calf is born, and if we're around, we always make sure that the placenta is off from over its face to make sure it doesn't suffocate, because it's essentially like having a plastic bag over your head. And then we kind of tickle their nose just to make sure that they're breathing fine, but this one is taking lots of big healthy breaths, so it's doing really well. So we're gonna let the mom and baby have some time to themselves, and once she feels ready, she'll stand up and she'll start licking it off. So she's drying it off and also creating that bond with her calf. She'll continue to talk to it, so making a really specific mooing noise to her calf, so then the calf can identify later on that that's its mom, and the mom will be able to identify the calf by its smell. So we're going to give them a moment. So after each assist has been made, we take these pails back and we'll clean everything off. Making sure everything is sterile and clean is incredibly important to make sure that we're not transferring anything from one animal to another. So we're getting lots of happy birthdays to the calf. So thank you, everybody. You can even suggest a name if you'd like. So there you can see the baby. And already at this point, even though the calf is minutes old, it's already trying to stand up. A healthy calf will be standing within approximately 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the size of the calf and also the how hard the labor or the birth was. So this one was a little bit more difficult for the cow and the calf, so the calf might take a little bit longer. But we're not worried at all. It'll be up and running around in no time. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free. I'm going to go make my way over to the sheep so we can go take a look at those. We don't start lambing until quite a bit later on in the season. It's already quite cool out, and even for the calves it can be quite difficult to stay warm after a few hours. They're pretty good, but for lambs that weigh only 5 to 7 pounds, it can be really tough. So we wait until the spring until it's much warmer and there's grass around for the lambs. One of the questions is it a boy or a girl? We didn't check to see what sex the calf is, and we'll just wait to find out. That's not one of the things that we'll be super concerned about until we start to tag it. The one thing that we really want to make sure is that the calf is breathing fine, as well as there don't seem to be any defects. Sometimes we do check, but in this case, it was a hard pull, and we were just happy that there were no complications. A question about what happens with the placenta. So it depends on the cow, because some of them will have a lot of placenta that they will expel after they've had the calf. But what will happen with a lot of the cows is that they will eat the placenta after they've given birth. And the reason why they eat the placenta is naturally in the wild, if they've given birth, they want to make sure that they leave no trace that there was a freshly born baby, because in that case there would be wolves and bears and other predators that would be searching for remnants that something had just been born. So if the cows eat the placenta, then they completely eliminate any trace. They completely eliminate any trace of a newborn baby. Because our cows are in the barn and they get cycled in and out fairly frequently, they don't always have time to eat their placenta because they will be kicked out fairly soon after they get everything. But that's not a problem. The placenta also contains a lot of nutrients. So they've been developing this calf for 9 months, and that takes up a lot of energy, a lot of nutrients, a lot of minerals. So that's a way that they can get that back. But not every cow does, and it's all right if they don't. So this is our Great Pyrenees Lizzie, and she's tied up for a little bit because otherwise she's just so excited and she wants to see everything that she kind of gets in the way of the videos. So she's just tied up for a second. She's just over a year old and she's a livestock guardian dog. So she stays outside the entire year and makes sure that there are no coyotes or deer or foxes or anything else that she deems not allowed around here. She makes sure that they're kept away. And she's been on her chain for a little bit this afternoon, so she's not quite happy about that. But she'll be just fine. Please sit down. So over here is our poultry barn. It contains some of our poultry, so most of my geese, my ducks, I believe everything goes back in here. They put themselves in at night. It is very loud. It is very loud in there. The geese make wonderful sentries, and they're actually quite aggressive when they get to the point in once they get to mating season, which they're just on the verge of right now. So they can get quite aggressive, especially after they've developed their nests and they're starting to lay eggs. So we're going to go back and see where the calves are, because the one did not receive his milk yet. So we'll see if he's hungry and we'll feed him some more. There's the one heifer calf, that's Kiss, and then the other calf is behind that panel. And the cats are all around because they are still hungry and still looking for some food to eat. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Come here. Come on. This is our heated shop. So this is where we keep most of our machines that we use on a regular basis. There are not lights on this side, but we walk down. This is our tub grinders. So this is where we mix up our silage and hay that gets fed out to all of the cattle. Then this tractor right here is a Fendt. It's a German-made tractor, and actually our aunt and uncle took a look at it in Ontario for us, and then we had it shipped here. And the tractors are used for not just feeding cattle in the winter, but also for cutting and baling hay in the summertime. So they all have various different jobs throughout the seasons, and they change with that. So we have a couple of cats in here. We have 4 kittens that are not really kittens anymore, but they still quite act like it. They were born back in September. And at that point their mother had already had a litter of kittens, so she wasn't too keen on raising a second. So she left them to us to feed. She knew we'd do a fine job, I guess. And so they grew up in the shop here, so they're quite used to it. And they're not a big fan of going outside. So they stay in the shop, and they keep the calves company because this is where the calves stay for most of the day when they're not running around outside. So we're going to go back out and feed that other calf. And while the tractors don't have to be inside, it's definitely handy to have them where it's warmer, because when we had the real cold weather for a little bit, just like you, the tractors don't want to work that well when they're starting from really cold temperatures. So having them inside saves us from any complications that we might have when we're dealing with cold machinery. So this is Hershey. This is our other bottle calf. And I'm going to see if I can get him to come with me so I can sit down and do this and hold the phone at the same time. Come here, baby. There. Sorry for the bit of moving the phone around, but just get him. He's a little bit more needy than the heifer calf. He knows the milk is in there. He's just being a little bit difficult. Once he gets going, he'll be good. So I had a calf, I was feeding a calf at the beginning of this video, and I'll kind of do one at the end, which is great timing. I'm glad the calves were accommodating. So this is one of our 2 bottle calves. And the reason that they're a bottle calf is, in his case, his mother is injured, so she wasn't able to feed him. And then the second calf, the mother didn't accept the calf as her baby. She was a first-time mom. So in that instance, we'll also take care of the calf. So they're both bottle calves. This one's a little bull calf, so he's a male. And then the other one is a female, and she's a heifer calf. He has his little tag, and they do have names on their tags because they're special. So his name is Hershey, and the other one's name is Kiss. And on his tag, if you'll hold his head nicely for me. Hey. You can see that there are some numbers and some letters. So the numbers represent the number of his mother. So his mother was 30F, and his number is 30H. So for cattle, what some people like to do, because you get to a point where you'll have a lot of animals and you will have a very complex tagging system, but you want to be able to identify out in the field what year an animal was born in. So there's a letter system that was developed. So it's using pretty much all of the letters of the alphabet. Not all of them are used, because when you get into letters like L and I, depending on how they're written, or once they get smudged, if you are if they get smudged while the animals are out in the field, they can turn into different letters. So certain letters are not used just to get rid of any confusion. But this year's letter is H, so they both have the letter H. That's the year they were born in, and that's the letter for this year. And then so her mother was born in year F, which I don't know off the top of my head what year that is, and so was his. Actually, I think the one is wrong. I'm going to have to let Alex know, because her mother, so Kiss's mother, was a first year heifer, and then his mother is older than that. So we're going to have to take that up with our tag maker. She already had her milk, so she's just playing, even though she probably does feel a little bit hungry. These calves get fed 3 to 4 times a day, and each time they receive roughly 2 liters of milk, just about 2 liters of milk. And so between how many feedings they get a day, that's almost that's almost 8 liters of milk a day for these 2 calves that weigh approximately 80 pounds. So the cats realize that there's also milk in these bottles, because they will occasionally get a little bit of a treat afterwards. So they like to hang around. And as we're feeding, we try not to let calves drink out of both bottles, just to try and create some biosecurity as far as not sharing. I usually feed them at the same time, so it's not as tricky to try and keep one away from the other. But as long as we don't make it a habit, there won't be too much of an issue with her sneaking a little bit. And he always takes a little bit longer than she does while drinking. So these 2 calves are a Black Angus cross. And Black Angus breed was developed in Scotland as the Aberdeen Angus back in the 1900s. It's still called the Aberdeen Angus in Scotland, but now in North America it's just referred to as Angus. And there are 2 branches in the Angus breed. You have the Red Angus and the Black Angus, but they are two different breeds. On our farm we have various number of breeds. So we have Black Angus, we have some Simmental, some Herefords, some Speckle Parks, some Maine Anjous, and Shorthorns. All of our cattle, or most of our cattle, are a cross between 1 or 2 of those breeds. And then my brothers own a few purebreds, so that means that they're just 1 breed. Well, she has had enough for today, and he hasn't had very much of his own, and she doesn't need any more. So, unless anybody has any more questions they'd like to ask, we're going to say goodbye and have a good night, and I will make sure to get some photos of that brand new calf so that everyone can see it in a bit better light and get a little bit closer to it, especially if you missed it. So Hershey and Kiss are going to say goodbye, and I'm going to say goodbye, and thanks so much everyone for tuning in, and I hope you had a wonderful time hanging out with some calves and some cats and some sheep and a horse. Bye everyone.